Yeah,
here in a bit.
I gotta leave about 5 hours.
We'll go ahead and get started. So we'll call the meeting to order. What did we determine a quorum was? I think
I don't know, but even if we're short, we can hear.
we can go ahead. Yeah, we can hear the
We can
presentation.
hear reports without, as long as
I
we don't.
think we determined that the quorum is who's up here, but I'm not sure.
I think I showed up late and established a quorum of 5 last
Right,
year.
I think that might have been it, Mike.
I think we only have 9 right now. I think it was, I don't know.
Yeah, so we'll just go ahead and get started. Minutes of the last meeting, I don't believe have been presented yet, and so we will see who has notes that they can put together in some form of a minutes. I think I have some, so I may call upon a couple members to see if their memory's better than mine. All
We
right?
will,
Be aware, David. Okay.
I'll count on something, I'll count on minutes from you. How's that?
That's right. Okay.
There's always the recordings on YouTube too.
Pardon me?
There's always the recordings on YouTube.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great. I can go there and refresh my memory. Thank you for that. Okay.
For my, sorry to interrupt, my memory, we canceled April, so it would have been the March meeting, which
It
might
would
have
have
been.
been March, and I know the main thing that we talked about was the Route 6 corridor and getting
The raise grant, yeah.
letters in, and the committee authorized that. And I did get the letter for the state. I don't know that the city had presented at that they wanted they were doing the supplemental ask at the point.
I believe those were the minutes taken by Mr. Miller that he submitted by hand and we scanned and sent to you, but I might be wrong, so we can follow up on
I think
that.
you're right. That was before my vacation, and that was a long time ago, so, in my mind. So we'll look for it from March meeting. Okay, thank you for those refreshers. That's helpful. All right, we'll move on then to staff updates.
Dr. Stevens, do you want an update from me, or do you want to hear about Columbus Avenue or from Aaron? You're the one
Let's
that's.
just go in your normal order and I'll leave when I leave.
I passed out a flyer about the Columbus Avenue streetscape design process that has some precedent imagery, just some inspirational visioning imagery, and a description from the project, about the project, largely drawn from the adopted downtown plan. So if you would like any more of those, let me know. I have some more copies, or if you have people asking you questions, that provide some good talking points just to help in your daily conversations. We are in about a 5-month engagement process through that early design right now. We did a site walk and we invited all of our downtown retailers and all property owners and shop owners and restaurant owners, all the stakeholders along the corridor itself. And just a reminder, that project area is from Adams Street to Water Street. So the consultants team is working right now on what they heard from the site walk, and they're going to bring back some alternatives to discuss with the stakeholders again. So we're going to do focus group roundtable conversations with retail dining merchants, and then one about festivals and events for our event producers, including the car show and others that have events that touch Columbus Avenue, and even folks that produce events on Shoreline Drive and the Pier, just so we can really understand what event producers look for if we're considering Columbus Avenue being flexible to produce events on. And we're also going to be engaging with the Arts Commission because we know that public art is an important component in the corridor. In the meantime, there's also significant site analysis going on by the engineering team. So if you might have seen KS Associates, their truck was out here for several weeks doing a survey. And the gentleman that was doing the survey said that it was the most detailed survey he'd ever done. So we have every nook and cranny, every doorstep, threshold, sign, tree, grate, paver, every single detail you could possibly record on the corridor within the site area, he has recorded. So the design team will have great information to make sure that they can get every detail right and understand how the new design what the implications are for every piece of architecture along the corridor and every intersection. They also drilled borings of the into the road, so they get a better understanding from a couple sample areas where the bedrock is, what's underneath, how much asphalt is there till you get to the brick street, 'cause the historic brick street is down there. So you never really know what you're going to find until you dig up the whole area, but they at least drew some samples to get them a better understanding of what that excavation will look like. So anytime anybody has questions, if you all are meeting with groups of folks and you want me to come have coffee with somebody and talk to them about the project, I'm happy to, extend that invitation. I told all of the, especially the restaurants and folks that have multiple employees, if they want me to come talk to their employees about it. And we are making effort to engage the residents that live on the corridor. Really, anybody that spends time on Columbus Avenue is invited to give feedback. So let me know what you're hearing and if you would like some more engagement from our team on that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I love this process and this project. And I used to work with some people at KS, but again, I have that spongy brain thing where I can't even remember the name of the principal that I used to call a friend. Do you know who there's like a female principal of KS she's still involved?
Lynn Miggins.
Yeah. Well, when you talked about those borings, that stimulated a thing that, before you said it, I was wondering if the brick is really still there and how much of it is intact, which leads to the railroad tracks, if they are just paved over as they were on Water Street or Shoreline and stuff. And to me, it sort of represents an opportunity in careful excavation to potentially salvage some historic elements that might be reincorporated, because I think that whole, I'm just kind of enamored with the history of downtown Sandusky, as there was a streetcar line that went down Columbus all the way out to the Veterans Home, and where the interurban kind of crossed by DeWitt, and just to be able to pull a little bit of salvage out of there to make some representation to go with the past, that people can envision streetcars running down and people running along the tracks on either side, that it was wide enough to have a road on either side of the tracks, but that it was really from an era that may be sort of reemerging in the use of public transportation and intermodal kind of ways that predated cars and may also transcend or come after cars again. I'd like people to be able to feel that history and recapture it and look at it as a potential map of things that could still come back again.
Thanks for that comment. Yeah, I'll reflect that to the design team. I love the idea of just celebrating our history, and you see it in our architecture, but to convey it in the streetscape.
Well, there might be a lot of bricks there that are really not in bad shape, and not that I'm saying it's very economically practical to repurpose a lot of bricks, but some bricks could maybe make a statement, and give some detail to really make our downtown and our streetscape kind of stand out and pop.
To have the Indy 500 brick start finish line.
Right, exactly.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Michael.
echoing Mr. Miller's sentiments, I know of one town that they took one little block of one street and were able to pretty much preserve the paving bricks, just sort of, because the whole town, a lot of towns, the whole town was these hard, very oblong but very deep, heavily visualized, a very strong block, starting with clay. And it was kind of neat to see that they were able to just relay that and keep that up as part of their history. Some streets have the old Belgian block. In the East Coast, they'll find more of the granite block. And so, yeah, respecting the history is a big thing that is easily lost and often appreciated more in hindsight, and what's lost is more appreciated in hindsight. I think one of the most successful and one of the strongest elements of the downtown redevelopment over the course of the last, 3-4 decades, and this goes way back to the Kinzelman-Klein studies, that I think we're seeing elements of now, are the sightlines to the water, that you feel like a port community, because even 3, 4, 5 blocks way down the street, way up Columbus, because there's quite a slope there, you feel like you're near the water because it's not obstructed. A citizen came to me and said, Mike, what are they doing? I heard they're going to put trees down the middle of Columbus Avenue and you won't be able to see the water. And I'm going, well, I don't know what they're doing. But I think it's important for us to keep in mind that even though it's been depreciated, that element, intentionally or not, has been depreciated, is less apparent on recent plans. I think it would be a mistake to lose that and lose that priority and lose that benefit, because it I think has served us really well.
Thanks for that. I've heard that too, and I believe that's from a drawing in the bicentennial vision of multiple different design options for Columbus Avenue. We are not currently evaluating an alternative to put trees in the middle. I agree with you that center of the corridor and the sightlines of the water are really important and iconic part of our city.
Yeah, because I recall there was one concept, and it might even been pre-bicentennial, or this was going to be a walking plaza with trees.
Yeah,
Columbus Avenue would be pedestrian, not open to traffic. So, but I don't recall recent drawings that put trees down the middle.
And the plaza pedestrian-only spaces got really popular in like the late 70s, early 80s, and a lot of cities did that and saw their downtowns fail even more, because you need a mix of pedestrians, multimodal vehicle access to serve the restaurants, retail, et cetera. So it's really a balance. We want the street to be flexible to shut down for cars sometimes when we do festivals, but on a daily basis, this is our main drag. It's City Hall faces here, so we have customers that need to get to those spaces. So parking is definitely incorporated for sure, and we're not taking the parking away. And then
that was going to be a question that I had, because we go from angle to parallel, so we obviously will lose some parking. So we need to be prepared to address where those people will be able to park. Obviously, parking has become a premium because of the popularity of downtown. Mm-hmm. And good morning, Mr. Zire.
Yeah, so one more.
To all. Dressed up today.
Good morning.
Good morning.
One more comment on the trees. The concept shows trees along the edges, lining the sidewalk, so they would frame the views to the water, and also a different type of tree as we have today. Today, our trees get very wide right at the point of signage across our restaurants and shops, so they block the views. We want to see a tree line that goes a little higher than that provides a windbreak in the winter for a little more comfort and shade in the summer, but also very nicely frames the water once they're mature. On parking, yes, we will lose some. Flipping to parallel, what we gain is an incredible amount of space for flexibility and outdoor dining and more sidewalks, which is what everyone, the top 2 comments in the downtown plan survey about the corridor was wider sidewalks and more outdoor dining, and that was the priority set by community. And I absolutely agree with you that parking management is important, especially right in the downtown core, right along Columbus Ave. And a couple things I've been talking with folks about is especially employees, shop owners, restaurant owners, don't park in your most valuable spaces. Make sure your employees are parking in the garage. Our garage is incredibly underutilized, and if you have your employees and yourself parking right in front of your front door, then you're not leaving those spaces open for customers. That's one consideration. Also, from parking management standpoint, I believe that my understanding is before the pandemic, there was a conversation about parking enforcement and how important it is to make sure that we have changeover on those street spaces and that we don't have Jet Express customers, for example, coming in, parking right on our most prized parking spaces and then going off for a whole day or 2 days before they come back and move it. So the circulation and the turnover of those spaces is just as much, if not more important than the number of them across the corridor. But we will have, once the design starts coming out, we will talk about specifically how many fewer there are. We are also looking at alternatives right along the edges of the corridor for adding additional public parking. And there's a number, we've been working closely with the Public Works Department to look at even the angle that we stripe our parking. If you tilt the angle just a little bit more, say on Washington Row or on Market Street, you can actually add several spaces. So you'll start seeing those coming out as we're completing those analyses and seeing when we can make those improvements as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. And the conversation with shop owners and employees about where they park has been ongoing ever since we've had committees working with downtown. And the lack of understanding is amazing, always has been. But
I worked for Mark Byers and Manhattan Clothing Company downtown, and that was a problem 30 years ago, I don't know. And Mark Byers was, you got to park in the parking lot, not in front of the store. And so, thank you for bringing that up again.
yep. Needs to be.
40, 50 years of
The
problem.
It's been.
Mr. Chairman, I had
Yes,
a
Mike.
couple other, I'm glad you're coring the street and on a more technical, on the more technical side. Yeah, that crown is, and we have streets where it's built, and often the least expensive way to fix a street is to add to it, and you can demonstrate that it's stronger and it'll last longer if you do that. But various places in the city, we've got upset citizens because now the street's higher than the sidewalk, and the street's higher than their yard, and water pooling and things like that. So it also actually makes you're gonna hear about it if we go parallel parking, because lots of people hate it. I don't hate it, but diagonal parking does get you more cars, and so I'm kind of torn there, because the streets you can probably get wider sidewalks if you want it without losing your diagonal parking. You can change the angle a little bit. You can, which reduces the perception of lost parking, even though you know and I know that as the angle changes, the number of spots you get on the street changes. But the street probably doesn't have to be as wide as it is right now. It's a pretty wide street, which invites some speeding. We can probably make, even today with doing none of this, we could probably improve things just by being maybe a little bit more unfriendly to speeders. And that takes me to being, not forgetting downtown residential use. And it's so easy to think about the commerce that you envision, and then kind of forget the impact it has on the people who actually live down there, the people that you would like to come and reside down there. We've done well with that, and we've got some new apartments again. We just had the Cook Building toured, and so we're going to have some more upscale residential use. It's a priority. I think you absolutely have to have downtown residential use for the long-term health. Otherwise, you're going to have periods of decline that you may or may not easily recover from. Downtown residential use has been a keystone of the renaissance of a lot of downtowns, and I think it's
Absolutely. Other comments for Aaron? All right. Thank you very much. This is exciting and obviously an ongoing process, and we'll be keeping track of that as we go. Other projects to bring updates?
Excuse me,
Mr. Harris.
thought this would be a good chance to sneak out. I got to get my daughter to school, so.
Okay, no problem.
All right.
Well, thank you for being here.
Yes, have a good one, everybody.
As long as people are exiting, I
Yeah. All right, Billy.
do the same.
Have a good one.
I come to the.
I got it.
All right. So other updates from staff today on any of the projects?
Absolutely, if you want as many, I can give you.
All right, Aaron, floor is yours.
All right, so I'll try to be as brief as possible, but the Justice Center is still under design. We're anticipating, I have a slightly different time schedule and timeline than our consultant does. They say they'll be done with design drawings in June. I say they'll be done with design drawings in July. So it's still this summer. We anticipate going out to bid and starting construction later this year. That one, I mean, it's moving forward just as we expected. If anybody has any questions on it.
It's the same question I always ask, I think, because I can't remember from one month to the next.
Right.
The scope of that design is restricted to the building itself and then just the immediate parking around that. And it's left to a different project. I mean, it goes to the tennis courts or not to the tennis courts?
Just the first parking lot to the north-ish of the building.
But
However,
that's the in and the out, right, with a little island in between?
just the in,
Okay, yeah.
that's going to be the parking lot for the Justice Center. However, I'm anticipating that the contractor is going to want to use the other parking lot as a
For
staging area.
Yes. Thanks. I'll try to lock it in.
Yeah, so we're accommodating that. If we get to that point, we have contingency plans for how traffic can get routed into and out of the Battery Park from that site, that side.
Then on the south side of the building, that street remains relatively unchanged? and-
Yes.
And you'll be able to go around the back and cops will still park in the south and?
The cops, yes, the officers will still have, it'll be a fenced and gated area, decorative fenced area for the officers, but the general public will not be able to drive through that parking lot off Washington. That'll be gated there just for the officers for secure parking.
And then to the east of that, what's currently the skate park, that stays there for a while, or is that eventually envisioned to go elsewhere?
So that is a bigger discussion that we still haven't had much conversation recently to know what's going on. Now, that skate park, we are planning on leaving it right where it is. And we are accommodating potential future drive between the skate park and the fenced area, the gated area that we're putting in.
That's where I was
That will
going,
go
because
between
originally-
and around if we need to. We're leaving that space there in case it does become a problem in the future, but we're also hoping that the parking lot closest to the tennis courts, we're going to switch that likely to not be one-way, and we'll have perpendicular parking in that lot, so you can go in and out from the same site, so you can get back through there from that location rather than having to sneak around and get close to the skate park, which obviously with the use that it gets, we're trying to keep as much traffic away from those users as much as possible.
At one point in the design process, I recall discussion envisioning a public road that was east of Meg Street, which would allow some potentially private development in what is part of that Battery Park parking lot now. Is that gone, or is that still a thought? And if so, how do you access that?
So that's something, so Maroos went back to the drawing board after the pandemic and things changed and everything with the economy and the market, and they wanted to go back and basically take a step back and reevaluate what they were considering and looking at that location. So I don't know what the concepts are anymore, what they're looking at this point. Those are conversations that we're hoping to have with them to figure things out this year still and see what their plans are. But we're still moving forward with Meg's with the intersection at Water Market and keeping the intersection at Washington. So
Regardless, that will be the major thoroughfare, even if there is a park kind of
yes.
promenade, driving
Yes.
promenade around it.
Yeah, so I guess my point in saying that we're putting an intersection at Water and we're putting an intersection at Market is to accommodate potential future perpendicular roads that will be able to intersect and go around. So if that is the thought, or if it ends up just being driveways into the property, at least they're lined up and they're not, mid-block type things to make it safer for the users on the Sandusky Bay pathway and there's less crossings.
Do you anticipate that there will be a public reveal of a proposed new design before something is kind of finalized, or they got like a lock on that property and it's kind of theirs to do?
Unfortunately, I wish I could speak on, I can't speak on the battery park stuff. I don't know. I don't have.
When you talk about the intersection redesign, is that part of the current Meg Street
Yes.
project then? So
Yes.
we'll see that here in the next year then?
Yeah, those intersections, we're going to wrap the curbs around, and we're coordinating with Marus to ensure that during construction and even after construction, that their new entrances into Battery Park off of Meg's will be off of those locations. So regardless of the timing of their project, their design, all that stuff, they're going to have to accommodate those new entrance locations into their property.
Maybe this might be the last one. Then the bike path, as it goes through that, will it follow Meg Street to south of the Justice Center? Or is there some thought that the bike path might ultimately be closer to the water than Meg Street in a new situation?
What I would say to that is, right now, we're installing the bike path from Water Street down to Sycamore Street, which is where the hook, the artwork is on the corner there. We're planning on, and we met a couple weeks ago, maybe a week ago, I can't remember, but we're trying to figure out how to finagle through that neighborhood back there. But we've always envisioned dual routes through there, one going along the old Pier track with a bridge that connects directly to Battery Park, plus the route that goes down Meg's and through the Cove District.
There's no real actual design for that now. It's just kind of leaving that as a possibility, not foreclosing the possibility of someday.
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how we can talk about Justice Center without Battery Park. And so it was natural that it led to that. I think that new road that Mr. Miller referenced is a very important, if not the most important feature, I think, of that. I think it was incorporated in both of the plans A and B in the public process, and then became part of the downtown master plan. I'm not sure, the expectation was that it was an extension of Washington. I'm not, it sounds like, I don't think it would be a disaster if it became an extension of Market instead, but it gets, and obviously wouldn't carry heavy traffic. It could even be one way, but it would be narrow and a place where people can get closer to the water. Maybe multimodal, but it's a really important feature, I think, and would probably rationally connect with not shoreline, with Water Street, but it would be a pretty narrow loop, just a horseshoe. If it reconnected with Market, it would be a lot better if it was Washington. The skate park, has its history. So, it's not a piece of furniture. It's been successful where it is, and there's been talk of, just moving it to wherever it's not inconvenient, as though it's an afterthought. And yet it's been one of the most popular, more successful facilities that we built. And it's the history of it's kind of neat because, well, you go farther back, the history of skate sports, and it kind of has its roots in the water in Venice or Venice Beach, and so being on the water, I think, is elegant. Also, we had some citizen participation from young people that helped us get that park in the first place. So I think we need to respect that, and I don't think it should be considered an afterthought. I think it should be considered something that we need to preserve and work around.
I heard you say you're not moving that, is that true?
Right. What I heard was a little bit of equivocation.
I don't think that's the case.
I agree, and I'm not hearing that, but I don't. It still comes back in discussions elsewhere, so I just don't miss a chance to reiterate the importance of keeping it there.
Well, the proximity to the cop shop was certainly not a coincidence, and it seems to have worked out over some reservations.
Yeah, it was probably not necessary, and probably if it made some folks happy, that's fine. I don't think that's the reason it works, but it works, so.
Very good.
Next, okay. So Shoreline Park and the marina, I think I mentioned briefly before that we were bidding out concrete work. We were going to continue that concrete work that was on the west side of the westernmost finger and that wrapped around the north side at Shoreline Park. We also did some pinning of the concrete at the marina to stabilize that because it was splitting and falling in. We did bid that work out. We did not get any bids at all.
For either project?
That's one, we grouped them together as one project. So now what we're doing is we're going to try to bid 3 concrete projects that we had this year all at the same time and see if we can get a bidder. What we're hearing is that these contractors are extremely busy right now. They're having trouble finding staff, so they're not bidding projects unless they're bidding them really on overtime, so that our costs are way high. So another project that I did kind of want to touch on is we are going to be resurfacing and reorganizing the parking lot on East Water behind Dailies and the bank over there. The new route will be some concrete work. We're going to add a central drive apron as an enter only, and then it's going to route kind of like a W or an M, where you'll have 2 exits on either side rather than having dual use. It's adding a little bit more parking to it, but it's going to make it flow a lot better. So that concrete work is part of what we're going to be bidding out at the same time as when we rebid the Shoreline Park work. As far as Shoreline Park, just to refresh memories, we are going to be continuing that concrete work on that western pier, and we're going to be bidding alternates to connect the parking lot on the south end to that, so that we can have a concrete walkway, sidewalk through the park to get up to that location that can be used by anybody. Because right now, the only way to get there is to take a wheelchair or whatever into the driving asphalt. So we're trying to make it so that you can get up to the north end without having to do that. So if we can get good pricing, we'll award that, and we'll add that to the award, and that'll make that park a lot more accessible. So
The Dailies parking lot or the East Water parking lot that's near Dailies and Savista, across from Lake Erie, Shores and Islands, Ohio, is a good example of us working together to figure out where we can add a few more spaces. I believe that design has 6 additional spaces. And we also are looking at a little beautification along the edge, so putting some planters there to really kind of spruce up the pedestrian experience along the sidewalk on that south side of the street as well.
On the Dailies parking lot, I think I was following along with what you were suggesting with one going in the middle. And it occurs to me that, and maybe this is a big part of where you pick up parking, but when there is high demand, when people are really parking, when they're looking downtown for a place to make their own parking spot, the first thing they do is clog the connector aisle right next to the sidewalk, but that wouldn't even be necessary if you have that plan that I think you're presenting, right? It allows you to put parking places closer to the sidewalk because you don't have to preserve an aisle to circulate.
Right, that central, right now, that central parking or drive lane is kind of created as a dead end by people when they are looking for parking. So we will be able to eliminate that because there'll be access all the way around. Obviously, there's people that park wherever they feel like when they can't find a parking spot as close as they want. So, parking up against trash cans or backs of buildings or in striped areas that they're not allowed, that'll be something that we'll have to monitor. But we're trying to eliminate as many of those locations because there is a lot of dead space in there right now that people can just pull a smaller vehicle in and leave it there as long as they feel like, and often it's in the way.
Yeah.
So.
We had a little extra space too that couldn't work for a drive aisle or a parking space, so we're gonna add some motorcycle/golf cart spaces there. I think it's 2 or 4 spaces. And that helps support the kind of multimodal vision of downtown that's documented in our downtown plan. One of the things I keep iterating is if we can get more bicycles and golf carts downtown, then folks that are parking at their marina, whether that be the yacht club or Dock of the Bay or Battery Park, they leave their vehicle there even when they come downtown. We can get them walking, bicycling, or taking a golf cart. Those take up a lot less space than a full-size vehicle, and there's no reason for, we want downtown to be a park once sort of place. And when we're doing that, that takes a lot of pressure off of our most high-demand spaces the on-street parking right in front of businesses.
Well, I'm sorry. The irregular shape of the back of Dailies provides some nooks and crannies that would be good for bicycles or motorcycles or other things that don't really lend themselves to pickup trucks and full-size cars and stuff, right? Is that what you're saying?
The ones that are in the design are actually closer to the sidewalk. It was a little found space between the landscaping improvements that we're gonna add.
But you know what I'm saying about how Dailies kind of has that in and out? It's not, like a straight line of cars that if that was reserved for those other dimensioned vehicles, that might be a much more efficient use of that irregular space if of course there's demand that justifies it, but it seems like a couple of big vehicles can clog up a lot of potential motorcycle or bicycle spaces and stuff there.
Are there opportunities for shuttles? You mentioned people leaving their cars at the marinas or wherever and then biking downtown or whatever. I don't know if there are any shuttles that are going to be running into downtown that could help serve that purpose too.
That's something that we discussed, but funding for something like that, if it's a city-sponsored, city-run project is a big question mark.
Yeah.
So we welcome ideas there. I do also think in the private marketplace, there's an opportunity there for an entrepreneur to pick up a pedicab business where, when you have the bicycle that carries folks around. I could see somebody, a young entrepreneur making some good money doing that in our downtown during the tourist season. Or what I'd love to see is a bicycle rental sort of companies come online where you could, I know Pedigo right now rents bikes and they've seen some success. They're very new. So I look forward to their business kind of expanding. And I have some of the marinas are considering bicycle rental or allowing their members to, borrow a bicycle. So I think that there's going to be a lot of ingenuity and creativity in the city as we continue to be more popular, and people really want to be a part of all the exciting things going on in Sandusky. I think there's open for valet, like there, I've seen in Columbus, and I've moved from there, so apologies if I bring up too many examples from there, but there's valet services that don't just service one business, they service multiple businesses, and I think that there's also opportunity in the market for valet as well during our busy season.
Lots of creative thought going in. I know the yacht club periodically has done, they've talked about, well, they had an extra cart, like golf cart that they let members at one time use, and I think they repurposed that cart now. But the bicycle thing has popped up a couple of times, just having bicycles available for people who are down there on a transient basis, or even members who come down to use the club and know that it's going to be difficult parking downtown with a car to use a bike. So, yeah, I mean, there's all types of spins that we could do, and we could talk about that all day, but I think those are all good things that, it's a good problem to have compared to what we used to have. So, Aaron, I would continue on. We're getting long in tooth into the meeting here, so.
Yes, absolutely. So a couple other updates just on those grants that you had mentioned earlier. Both of those were submitted. The one was submitted by ODOT for raise application. I think it was 30 to 36 million or something like that. Total with the requested in the $25 million range. That was for the portion inside the city of the pathway that would go from Cedar Point Drive back to Cleveland Road through the old Pier track. And then the remainder of the work was outside the city. The other one was $18 million request from the city for the portions of the pathway that remain unfinished, including the Pier track and that bridge that would go over connecting Battery Park to the Pier track. That was included in that one as well. So those two requests have been submitted. I'm anticipating finding out late this year. I'd love to find out in August. I'm hearing that they're going to say in August, but they always say August, and then you find out in December or the following August. Warren Street, I know that's not necessarily on the Bayfront, but it connects to the Bayfront, so we are planning on bidding that one out in June or July. If we can get plans finalized by the consultant here shortly. That one will have the pathway along the west side of the street connecting Huron Park to really East Water Street, where next year we're going to be doing the pathway on East Water Street, and we have the connections and nodes and stuff in there to make those modifications. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up earlier is when talking about the trees blocking those views, that was something that we were very conscious of even back when we did that one block of Warren Street back in 2014, was not putting trees in the middle of the boulevard area down the center of the street because we didn't want to block those views. So that has been something that's been, the city manager made sure that he wanted to preserve those views. So I do know it's been a, 7 years since that project, but that's still something that's a top priority. So it's good to know that we're all on the same page with making sure that that stays. As far as the Jackson Street Pier, just a quick update. I don't have a ton of information because it's a little bit outside of my realm, but the last year, if you recall, with all the concerts and all of the activity on the pier, there were quite a few boats and quite a few vessels that wanted to moor off of the pier and connect to it. We have put signs up on the north end of it that you're not allowed to moor on that north end. We do like the fact that boats will sit in the water in that slip next to it. We had the fire department had divers go out and make sure that there wasn't anything that was gonna damage the bottom of the boat if it did get in there, make sure we had good depths. Obviously, we're hoping we don't get any yachts that are 20 feet down or anything like that, but the boats that we got last year should be okay. We cut off all of the protrusions that we could see above the water. There were a lot of bolts. I think it was probably from old timbers that were there that were probably used when it was a ferry dock. I think the timbers kind of fell in and probably washed away somewhere, and those bolts obviously take a little bit longer. So they were still there. We cut those off, and we had the firefighters go and feel underwater. So we got everything we could to make it as safe as possible for people to enjoy those summer events that we have out there. We're not going to necessarily be promoting it, and we're hoping that people don't decide to stay there longer than the event, because that's not what the intent is. So we are going to be monitoring that and making sure people aren't like docking there overnight and things like that. So that's intent is just for the duration of those events. And then the last thing I have project related on my agenda is I wanted to give a quick update. I know I brought it up last time about the high rate treatment project at our wastewater treatment plant. That project is moving forward. We had a really good discussion about a month ago, I think, with the planning department and with the users of the AMVETS and Sprout fields for those little leagues and the baseball tournaments and those things that they hold out there. We're doing everything we can to meet their needs, as we always do. We're trying to make sure that any improvements that we do for meeting these requirements of this high rate treatment project cause the least impact to the park over there. So if there's one area that we're probably going to have to use for staging, it's the area north of the playground that would be closest. It's in Sprout Park. It would be the northeast field within Sprout Park that we are probably going to have to use that for staging of equipment and materials and things. So our plan is to relocate that over to the former AMVETS area where that field was previously removed. So we're working with Parks, Planning, and everybody else. We're going to have, once we get a general plan finalized, we'll probably, do more of a PR type of a thing of what our plan is.
Will that be
for
next year then, Aaron? Or-
So that project is, I feel like all of them are on the same timeline, but, I mean, that's going to be a fall bid.
Okay.
That's a 24-month construction project, and it has to be completed by December 24. So the earlier we can get started, the better, especially with the logistical issues right now. So that one, we're hoping to have plans finalized for everything and make sure that we're doing everything. If there is an impact to those ball fields, to that park, then we will make sure that we do it in the off season so that they can open up next year and not be impacted at all, actually be positively impacted, because if you think about it, that new ball field would be right next to the bike path where it routes just to the west of the boat ramp. So
Right.
those children that are using that field could take their bikes and put a couple bike racks out there. They can just park there and just use the ball fields anytime they want without having to cross 2 or 3 streets in a wastewater treatment plant.
That'd be interesting.
So that's all I have. I did want to mention, though, that I do have vacation planned in the first week of June and the first week of July, so I won't be able to be here if we hold to the schedule of the first Thursday of the month.
Giving us a nice comprehensive update, so appreciate that.
Unfortunately, all these things are going to be bidding right during those 2 months, so.
You have a big August, well, I'll be out the first week of August, so you can take the whole, all the updates that month.
Okay.
And if you guys,
All right.
I know we're running late, but if you do have any questions, feel free to email, call, or anything else.
Appreciate that. All right, any questions or any updates for projects that Aaron didn't touch on, that anybody has in their mind? All right, any old business? Other old business?
Anything new, different about the roundabout by Thirsty Pony? I mean, that's nothing that happens construction-wise during the Cedar Point season, but the design, what I remember is the design phase is out for bid right now, or?
The design phase has been awarded. It's the same firm that did the preliminary design. They have about 6 conceptual ideas of exactly what they feel the roundabout could look like. And then once they have a public meeting, I think it's in about a month or so, they haven't finalized a date, then they're going to kind of zero in on 1 or 2 ideas to talk about at that public meeting. So that's still a little early. That's a 2024 construction year, I believe, for that project, so we still have some time. And that reminds me of something I didn't bring up, was that Causeway Wetlands project. That one is pretty much done for this phase. I didn't get out there, but we are putting a fence through the driving where the trucks went out to empty the stone, because we have had people drive through the orange snow fence and go fishing out there. They've removed it and driven out onto the wetlands and started fishing. Like, that's not the intent.
But that's going to be the repository for dredgings from here to a
Yep.
while.
2-3 years.
And then that roundabout by Thirsty is the first one, and everything else is farther down the road, like at the, down by the motel where whatever that road is comes out.
Yeah, they were all included in a traffic study that was performed through the county by Trans Systems and with ODOT, and they put roundabouts at every intersection between Cleveland Road and Route 2. We both outside the city and inside the city applied for funding for the same funding process about 3 years ago. Fortunately, we got ours funded, and now they're looking to get that one funded, and that was that raised grant that we had talked about previously. But yeah, it's at Camp Street, at Perkins, at Rye Beach, and then 2 more roundabouts at the off-ramps and on-ramps for Route 2.
But none of those will be like by 24 or anything, they're all farther out.
I think the construction year on those is 26 or 7.
Be here before we know it.
We won't be driving.
Just people ask, I'd like. No, wait, Kevin, we'll be driving those. Roundabouts are fun. What the heck? They are fun.
It's like a merry-go-round, even better.
What's that?
Like a merry-go-round, even better.
Yeah, even better.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just can't help injecting I think roundabouts are great. People are going to get used to them. ODOT's roundabout happy right now, that's great. But they really work better, not as an afterthought, because sometimes, when the development's already there, you got to start cutting away. And there are intersections, well, I think Rye Beach comes to mind as there's some defunct real estate or businesses there anyway, so there's some real estate available, so it's a great spot. It's hard to shoehorn them in sometimes where development already exists.
Yeah, it's better to have an open vista so you can see the traffic coming at you and have some anticipation. That's
Yeah,
for
if you
sure.
can have this vision of the future, and if you know that you're going to have development in the future, and it's just farmland, and there's no gas station on the corner, then it's great.
It's good. That's good. All right. We've done old business, new business. I think at this point, we're at 8:30. Thank you, Kevin. We will adjourn. I appreciate it. Quick question. Do you have any idea